Hi guys, my name is Yuli and welcome to Nerd Alert, where we talk about everything nerdy. For today's video, I'm doing a review of the book Red Knight by Miles Cameron. Now, this book is going to be linked down in the description in case you need the synopsis, because I'm very bad at summarizing what a book is about, to be honest. I'm terrible at it. Basically, it's set in medieval times, and it's probably it's one of the only books that I've read that are have that truly medieval feel to them. I feel like where they're like knights and nuns. It sounds so weird. And like melee type of fights, which is so weird. It's one of the things that I actually really loved about this book. One of the last medieval books of like this kind of sort, low-key, was The Great Coats by Sebastian de Castell. So yeah, now I gave this book 3 stars and I had quite a few problems with it, but I just want you to know that I enjoyed it. This video is going to be full of mostly my criticisms and things that I didn't like, but I actually really enjoyed it for what it is. So if it sounds like I hated it, I didn't. I rated it 3 stars and I also considered giving it 3.5. So if I ever reread it, I may give it more. Now, as you can see here, I had quite a few tabs in the beginning and then one random here at the end. And that's it. And that is because I was reading it physically for like the first 50 pages and then I just found out that I had a credit and got the audiobook. And honestly, it was probably a good decision for me because I always have a hard time getting into new high fantasy books when I first start a new series. I don't think that I would have had like the easiest of times getting used to his writing style because it's a very like old school, as in traditional fantasy writing style, and kind of like a traditional fantasy plot-ish. It will make sense later. The audiobook helped me read it faster than I would have because I feel like at first I thought that I didn't like it as much as I would have if I had read it physically, but I actually think that if I had actually read it with my own 2 eyes, I would have probably been skimming through it, and I'm going to explain why in a second. Now, let's just get right into the review and stop waffling. As I said, I rated this book 3 stars. And I absolutely love the premise. As I said, it's about knights. It has a medieval setting, and it's kind of like obviously inspired by our own worlds. So while the countries have different names, they are Christians. The god is called Jesus or Jesu. I think I heard it said either way, so I don't know. It's kind of weird. There are nuns, there's magic, and there's the wild, which kind of reminds me of the wild in Kings of the Wild, but it's spelled with an I instead of a Y. But anyway, I really like the fight scenes in this book because they're very well written and they're just awesome, and some of them are kind of gory, which I am always in for because I just love a good fight with some descriptive writing and gore. I love it, and it's also probably one of the first books, or one of the only books that I've read with like melee type of fights, which is weird because I had this one module last year that I had to basically write a game script, and my game script was about a knight, and I don't know if I had a melee type of fights, but during my research I came across melee games. So since then, in my head, melee is just like a type of game. These are basically my positives. I loved the fight scenes, I love the premise, and it's written like a traditional fantasy book, so it reads a lot older than it is. It was published in 2012, but it kind of reads like it was published in the 90s. So here is where the positives end. It was an enjoyable read, but there's just so many problems that I had with this book, and I'll start with the points of view. I don't usually mind a lot of points of views in books. I actually love that the more points of views the better. However, like with Legacy of Ash, for example, we were following so many characters, but all of them were relevant. While with this one we have a ton of random characters who we meet once or twice and never again. For example, there was like this one point of view of a bear. Yes, a bear. It was it had its own plot line, but it was like dropped like halfway through the book because I feel like they solved that plot line, and that bear never like comes up again. And I would probably say why, but it could be like a low-key spoiler if you care about a bear. But I honestly, at one point, I even forgot that it was a character. So when I finished the book, I remember that there was a bear in the book, and I'm like, what happened to it? What happened? Because I don't remember. I don't remember if that plot line was even solved. Although I have like some vague memories of it actually being solved. Now, I also would space out a lot throughout the audiobook, and it's no fault of the audiobook itself. I liked actually the narrator and everything. I just really, I was getting bored throughout a lot of it because the book is quite slow and the plot itself is quite slow as well. So it's just slow in general. I don't know how many times I'm gonna say slow in this video, but we will see. And yeah, that's basically it. It's a very slow paced, and I'm not always a fan of slow paced books, and the writing is not my usual thing, so to speak, because it's kind of like descriptive. It's not overly descriptive, but it's still more descriptive than I usually like writing to be in books, because I had no trouble reading A Legacy of Ash, but this was like making it hard. I would really like, it would take me an hour to read like 20 pages, and I usually read about 30 pages from fantasy books and like 60 from like contemporary in an hour. I mean, it's also really weirdly problematic. That was hard to say. Because it's like, it's problematic while also not being problematic, and it's as confusing as it sounds. Because I'm not going to really sugarcoat it and actually say it as it is here, because I feel like if I don't actually say it, it's gonna be weird. I will feel bad about it. Basically, the knights in this book are led by a young captain who has some kind of a secret. Two kinds of secrets, which low-key get revealed at the end of the book anyway, but I'm going to get to them. So this captain is basically leading a bunch of misfits who have been, I'm not sure if any of them were like proper knights before he like got them into a company, because I honestly spaced out a lot. But anyway, so they are knights and they're being led by this young captain, and most of them, I think I got the vibe like they were like not always good people. So great, they do some questionable things, or at least try to do questionable things, and raping women was brought up on so many occasions. Like they would talk about it like it was nothing, and like I'm aware that it's set in medieval times, and also like I'm not judging it too harshly about it, because things like that happened and still do. But I just don't like the way they were talking about it, because they never did it on page. I don't know, off page. They never did it on page. They just were talking about it. That's why I'm saying that it's problematic while also not like problematic at the same time. Doesn't even make sense. I don't know. What really annoyed me was the captain, because I really liked him in the beginning, and then I kind of found out his age, which sounds so petty, but I stopped liking him as much after I discovered his age, because he's just younger than I thought he was, and it felt weird. Like he's not a teenager, but just barely, and he just hides his like age, like it's such a big deal. And like, I don't know, it may be because he already had some kind of like his people already had some kind of prejudice for him, because they knew, like, they don't know who he is, they don't know his name. They call him Captain, and he's the Red Knight for everybody else, but they know that he is like somebody important, or he was somebody important, and it's just weird not knowing who your captain is. And I'm not sure why that's kept such a big secret, because he's very bad at keeping secrets, to be honest. So I have no idea. But anyway, I was talking about it being weirdly problematic, and that's where Amicia comes into place. So as I said, they are nuns, so it's because of their big conflict. It's they go to like help some nuns with some problems from the wild, the problems being some dangerous creatures, and he finds this woman Amicia who gets strategically placed close to him by the abbess, and he sees her and she sees him, so nothing happens. And then a few pages later, he goes and kisses her out of nowhere, and he's like, I know you want it. And she's like, no. So she then kisses him back and boxes his ears. And I'm like, so you don't want him, but you kiss him and slap him in the ear. Okay. And throughout this whole book, she would proceed to give him very mixed signals, and I'm not blaming her, I'm blaming both of them. Because he would go and be like, I know you want me. So then she would be like, I don't. And then he would still do the same thing. He would go to her whenever he saw her and would be like, I know you want me. And she's like, no, I don't. And then, after 400 pages, we get a point of view from her. And she again behaves like she usually does. Pushes him away. And he's like, but I like you. And she's like, nah. And then after she finds out who he is, she basically blames him for like going through like some hard times as a child. It's basically like she calls him weak for it or something like that, or selfish. I'm not sure which one of the two was, because it was like so ridiculous. And then she made it all about herself, which is like, okay, I mean, I don't really care, but it was kind of like, oh yeah, you're this like big guy and I'm just a whore. And I'm like, she's just a nun, but I don't know. I don't know. It was confusing. It was annoying. He was being very clingy to her while she was clearly saying that she didn't want him. But in her head, from her point of view, yeah, she actually did, but she didn't. So that's why I say it's weirdly problematic. Well, it's not being problematic because she wants him, but she doesn't want him, or she doesn't want him, but she wants him, and like he's just there being like, I love you, and I'm like, why? Because he literally doesn't know her at all. Like, he doesn't know anything about her but her name and a little bit of her past that she shared reluctantly to kind of like take him off, to kind of like make him lose interest in her. And then this book also has like a weird obsession with virgins, and I don't know if it was a thing for the time it's set in, but it's just weird and annoying because it's like brought up so many times. But this isn't even the main part of the plot. It was just so persistent that I really grew tired of it. There is also another relationship that also kind of comes out of nowhere, but it's better. Well, not better, but it at least was kind of consensual, I guess, which I get. It's just a lot better than the Red Knight himself doing whatever he does. As I said, nothing was done without consent on page, but it was just so weird. Anyway, so I started talking about the random points of view and talking about the bear, but I forgot to mention the other points of views. So I think that if this book had been polished a little bit more, it would have been better, because there were so many points of views that could have just been condensed to one. Like there were, so for example, we're following like so many characters that I don't even know who is relevant and who's not. For example, the Red Knight is relevant, the King is relevant, the Queen is low-key relevant, but not really. And then we have a few generals and like knights throughout the country who are all going to the abbey without even knowing it in the beginning, because you know how everybody just gets on their journey and eventually everybody ends up in the same place. Like that's basically the book. So there's so many characters, and we even have the villain's point of view as well, which, okay, cool, we'll leave that there. But then there's so many characters, especially in the Knights, the Red Knights company, that they just weren't needed. For example, his squire Michael, I just don't know why we got so much of his point of view because he was always with the Red Knight, so he didn't witness anything more differently than the Red Knight himself, to whom I'm going to refer as the captain. I think that Michael's point of view could have just been the Red Knight's point of view again, because as I said, he didn't see anything that the captain didn't see himself. He didn't experience anything differently, and his love story was completely unnecessary and could have happened off page because he couldn't care less about his love life, because again it was kind of weird. And yeah, so like that was totally unnecessary. Then as I said, a lot of the people in the captain's company have points of views, two of them being Bad Tom and Sauce. Sauce is a woman. I just need to make that clear. Oh, that's like another good thing about the book, is that there are women in the company, although Sauce is the only character that they mention a lot. So yeah, she had like 2 or 3 segments in the book, like very little, and they could have been written from somebody else's point of view who was more relevant and who had more chapters in the book. Chapters? No, segments, because the chapters are very long. This is not a negative, the chapters are very long, but I'm sorry, I'm just like, it's a mess. So, but Tom had more chapters, so maybe he should have been made into like a bigger character with a bigger role, or just had more segments from his point of view. I'm not sure how to talk about it because they weren't really that relevant. I feel like, I don't even know. I wasn't like the biggest fan of them, just because he started having chapters very like it was just like late in the book, so like I didn't really care. They would just add new characters as the book was progressing, and I just didn't have time to get attached to any of them. And as I said, so many of them could have been condensed, like so many of these points of views could have been condensed to just one, because we have like different groups of people, and from these groups there would be several characters with a point of view. And I think that if from these groups there was just one character with a point of view, it would have been so much better and easier, because as when they all came together, we would have had just 4 or 5 points of views and not like 20. I haven't counted the characters, so I don't know how many there are, but it was just a chaos, especially at the end of the book. It was complete chaos when there was a fight, and I like, maybe it was a good way of showing how chaotic and messy and like weird a battle scene could be, because there would be like this long paragraphs about different characters, and it would be like Gawain, like random, this guy, that guy, Thorn, Father Henry, or whatever, and I just like couldn't care less about it. And also, one of my biggest criticisms and one of my biggest problems is that we have this one traitor and he has a point of view. So it's kind of obvious who the traitor is from the get-go. So it's like, what's the point of you having a mystery in your book if you're going to reveal it on page immediately to the reader and just leave your characters wondering? Like, this is the same problem I had like with a few thriller dramas that I'm going to talk about in another video. And I just don't get it, because it's like, the point of having a mystery is not to keep your characters on edge, but to keep your readers and characters on edge, or just your readers. Like, you need something to make me want to read on. And if one of your biggest like mysteries is solved, the moment you make it like there is like pointless to have it in the first place. And I don't even think they ever found out who the traitor was, and the way that plot line with the traitor ended was just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous and so stupid, and I didn't like it at all, because it's why? If there had been less characters, it would have been better, because the book would have been a bit shorter with less irrelevant parts in it, because there's so many random things in it. Like, there is this seamstress in the book that has like random parts in it. There's like this one nun who is kind of like not second in command, but she's very well respected. So she also has a point of view, but she had like 2 or 3 segments in the whole book. Amicia has a point of view, and while it would have been better to see her point of view in the beginning of her relationship with the knight. I call it a relationship, but it's not. It's just the closest words that it comes to it. It would have been better to see her like point of view in the beginning, but not at the end. But honestly, I really don't care about her. I don't care about most of the characters, and it's because we don't have enough time with them in the beginning. The story itself starts off very early on, but it's so slow that it doesn't even feel like it, and we don't have enough time with the characters, with any of them, with any of 25,000 characters in there to make us, or at least me, care about any of them. Like, the only reason I care about the Red Knight is because I low-key interested in the main character, and he's obviously the main character of the book, and that's just me. But yeah, it's like I don't care about any of them, and they could have died, like all of them could have died, and I wouldn't have given a single because they just aren't developed enough for me to care. I'm not attached to any of them. I don't know much about any of them, and the only person I liked, I think his name is Gawain, but it could be somebody else because there were so many names with the letter G in it. But he is the brother of Gabriel, and I just feel like he's an interesting character, and that's pretty much it. But I'm not done yet. So I said that I started annotating it in the beginning, and you can actually see that I really liked it because I have pages like this where I have highlighted and written in like multiple places on one page, and sometimes, and I don't usually do that, but I was really enjoying it in the beginning, and I just have like a few things that I wanted to note. So on page 10 of my copy, which is the UK edition, the third line that I have highlighted says, "The captain made himself take it without flinching. There were some secrets he would pay the price to preserve." He has magic. That's not a spoiler because it's obvious from that line if you read the whole page. He has magic. And they go to nuns, and the nuns have also magic. And why I'm saying that is because in this book he says he'll pay the price to preserve. And then everybody knows he has magic, like he doesn't keep the secret. But then it's kind of like, but then people are surprised when he does have magic. So this is another thing. I don't think the world and the magic were developed especially well because I don't really know much about them. And about the magic, I don't know why it's such a problem for them to have magic. Obviously it's set in medieval ages and they're being called a witch, and there's like witchbane that they can be killed or is poisonous to people with magic, but it's not really this explained. So, and this is on page 50. He says that he will have to pay the price to keep this secret a secret, but then literally like 200 pages later, or even like less, like when they first go to the abbey, he uses his magic in front of his people, but it's a secret. Like he's supposed to be keeping it secret from them as well as everybody else, but he uses magic in front of them, and he basically disappears in front of their eyes. And I just don't get it. Like, he said that it was supposed to be a secret, but then he didn't keep it a secret. And that's why I think this book should have been edited better, because if the editor had like removed that line, it would have been better. If there had been like another line added, saying something that kind of clears things up, again, it would have been better, because by this line being there, it leads me to believe magic is kind of like forbidden or something that's not very good, that people have to hide it not to get killed, because the nuns do get called witches and stuff. But then they use their magic in plain sight. Yes, they're battling the wild, but still, like, nobody's keeping it secret. And he says that, and that line said that he's supposed to keep it a secret, and it just doesn't make sense to me. That's not the reason I didn't like it, because they're like low-key contradictions, and honestly, if I had been listening to the whole book on audiobook, I would have never noticed this, so I would have missed it. But I was reading this very carefully, because when I annotate, I read very carefully, and that's basically why I noticed that. And it's not that big of a deal, but at the same time it is, because one of the main things in this book, the magic, is very underdeveloped, because I just don't know if it's forbidden or not, and why he has to keep it a secret when everybody else knows about it, because he doesn't keep it a secret. It's so ridiculous. This video has been going on for a while. It's a mess, but I hope you enjoyed this review. Check out some of our other videos, either here or on the end screen when I finish, and some in the description down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and follow our social medias. I'm actually going to put Melissa's and mine in the description this time. And yeah, tell me if this is on your TBR, and please don't let my review dissuade you from reading this book, because you may enjoy it, who knows. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon. Bye!